Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on air for live questions and answers, pole shift, magnetic excursion, grand solar minimum, and solar outburst. If you're out there in the vlogosphere, tell me how the audio is. How's the video? Looks good on my end. Had to do some just final adjustments there. Actually, I was picking my nose. If you really want to know. Okay, 5x5 looks good. Sounds good. All good in the wood. Dan Bassler. Sherry is in the house. Regina, Jackie Tigger, John Mewis. A lot of people I've never even heard of. Reach the Masses, Lakeland. Free Life Taz. No Ferrati, Vari, Cindy Collins is in the house. Eric Court, Misfits, NG. Heads up. Welcome to the show, Victor Debs. Who else do we have in here? I'm in the house. Look at that. Frozen is here. We also have Static Bot. Dances with Dingleberries. Stephen Lafleur. Jackie Tigar, already said that. Numa Chan, Ed DePleast, Frank Pizzo, Antonello Baschetti. We love you, Anton. Sweet Tooth is in the house. Forgotten Creation. And Michael White has joined the chat with Colton Knifel, as well as Rand Allen. Welcome to the show. Hello, San Diego. D-Mac is here. All right. Everyone, welcome to the show. Let's get on with it. Questions and answers. First thing we'll do is we'll share the screen with you. And we're looking at the Rosenthal et al. 2013 500-meter Mascar straight water temperature. And this is the Holocene temperatures for the last 9,500 years. And you can see that our interstadial has been getting quite cool. Since about 4,500 years ago, the temperature has precipitously dropped about 3 or 4 degrees C. And the mainstream media wants you to believe that if the temperature rises 1 or 2 degrees C in the next 100 years, we're all going to die. Well, that is not supported by historical and scientific evidence, which you're looking at here. There were many dozens of empires when the earth was much warmer. Several degrees warmer, in fact. All right, let's look for some questions. We're waiting for some questions. Vari, Leah's name is Leah, L-E-A-H. So you typed in there Lee, which is something different. All right, so if we could get to some questions, we could really get the show rolling. We don't want that at all. So here we are back without the share. No Ferrati says finally in the low 30s here in northern Arkansas. Well, hello. Always wondered how much the poles shift with all major earthquakes. There is no evidence that the poles do anything when earthquakes occur. So the poles and earthquakes are not related. And when we're talking about the poles, I assume you're talking about the geomagnetic pole. The geomagnetic pole is the current pole that is shifting, not the rotational pole. The pole that the earth rotates around is static. It's been staying there forever. And the geomagnetic poles are moving. That's where compasses point. They have nothing to do with the rotation, and they have nothing to do with earthquakes. There is a relationship with the waning magnetosphere. We are currently in a geomagnetic excursion where the magnetosphere is waning and the geomagnetic pole is moving rapidly just past the rotational pole. It's moving towards Siberia. that when the magnetosphere wanes, there is an increase in earthquakes as well as volcanic eruptions. So we do know that. All right, looking for questions. That's why we're paying taxes. So we don't die. Exactly, Timothy, right? Complete scam. Okay. Thank you, Eric, for imploring the masses to smash that like button. 108 watching. It only appears as if 42 thumbs ups are occurring. So, question. I think I speak for everyone. This is coming from Stephen Lafleur. We need links for the plasmode energy. Where do we get it? Oh, well, I will link it below immediately. I can just give it to you right here. This is, alrighty. This is the plasmoid document. You've all got it. Just sent it to you. Just shoved it right up your due to the interwebs. Okay, so all done, Stephen LaFleur. You get it right here at Magnetic Reversal News. Antonio Bacchetti, when do you think the sharp turn towards the cold will happen? Well, 2024 is a bad idea for that. And let me just explain my reasoning. First, let me pull up solar cycle comparison here. Okay. Presente. All right, so what we're going to share with you is the solar cycle progression. And you can see here the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 solar cycles and solar cycle 24 and 25. Now, 25, solar cycle 25 is the brown line, and it's peaking right now. And we still have at least 10, 20 months of solar max. That's almost 2 years worth of solar max. So I expect solar max to be a peak in solar activity for this cycle, which is going to mimic solar cycle 24. And there won't be a precipitous drop in temperature until after 2 years. So right now it's 2022 winter, 2023, 2024 winter. In the spring of 2025, we should see maybe a year without a summer. And then 2026, 27, 28, 29, 30 through 40. It's going to be 15 years of decreasing temperatures into the null set. Cycle 26, as predicted by Zarkova, will be the grand solar minimum cycle, the bottom of the grand solar minimum set, which will include 24, 25, 26, 27, and 28. This should be about a 50-year grand minimum based on what we know now. Could extend longer, but that is the best case scenario that we have, Mr. Bacchetti. I don't think it's going to continue to get colder until another few years. The temperatures may stabilize at what they are now. And if you look at the current global temperatures for the month of November, we are only 0.1 degrees above the 40-year average. So we're at the average for the last 40 years. I don't expect it to drop below average for another 3 or 4 years, if that makes sense. So let's stop sharing there and let's get back to the questions. Your hypothesis on the inland seas that used to be in inland Australia. I don't have one. I have no idea what you're talking about, John. Okay, Michael White says, is there a chart showing Earth's gravity over the last 100 million years? Michael White, you might not understand gravity that much, but there are certain maps that have come into geologic nomenclature in the last several decades. These are Bouguer anomaly maps, gravity anomaly maps, and that you can gain access to them, but they're only for the last maybe few decades, 5, 6, 7 at the most, but they're not all encompassing on the Earth. But there are definite circumplanetary gravity anomaly maps for at least the last several decades. So you can access those if you do your due diligence and surf on the interwebs and look for gravity anomaly maps of Earth. That's all I would put in the Googler, and look for those gravity anomaly maps, and you will be able to get them. And what it shows is that there's certain areas based on rock types where there's higher and lower gravity. And this has been established by some of the most esoteric scientists, including Doug Vogt, in his early works decades ago about gravity anomalies, where literally you can go to a certain spot in Arizona and other areas on the map and weigh less in one area than in another area. If you bring the same scale, you can weigh yourself here, walk a mile over here, and weigh yourself there, and you're two different weights. Pretty amazing. So there's no real chart, or maybe there's a chart, I just don't know. But the idea of gravity being constant is not true. Gravity is not constant. It changes depending on the rock type or where you're standing on Earth and your elevation, which leads us to believe that the Earth has changed its dimensions, and explains why dinosaurs could exist on an Earth that was much smaller. Are you picking it up? McKinty John says, I've been looking at the expanding Earth theory. How does the Earth expand? Well, you've asked a very big question, and I want to thank you to the super chatter first, Free Life Toss. Before we get to you, John McEltinty, Free Life Toss, thank you for your Australian $20. I think that's what that is. Hey, Diamond, I've noticed lately that the colors of the ocean here in Tasmania is changing. It's obviously a result of light wavelength changes, according to Free Life TAS. Could be changes to the sun or to the atmosphere. Your thoughts? Well, a body of water reflects the sky. So if the sky is changing color where you are, Taz, because of the Hunga Tonga eruption, especially if you're looking at sunset, then the color of the water is going to look different, especially if the sky is adding some reds from that volcanic particulates up in the ionosphere. So if you get some red particulates changing the color of the sky red, and you're normally seeing a blue or a green or whatever color you're seeing in the water, it's going to shift that blue-green by adding the red. So it's not necessarily, Free Life Taz, that there's something chemically changing in the water that you're looking at. It's probably refraction, just like you thought, with the color changing in the sky, changing the water color. Mind-blowing. Now, back to McKinty John. You've been looking at expanding Earth theory. How does the Earth expand? Well, this is a whole undergraduate class in its own right, with about 12 to 20 classes on the idea. But the general idea would be this, that the Earth and all planets are no different than the sun at a bigger scale, or an asteroid that's electric, which we call a comet. All of these objects are connected to external sources of power through Birkeland currents. So in the case of a comet, as it's coming in, it's hitting a field of electricity, and it creates its own Birkeland currents that form ionospheric tails while it's in a Birkeland current, which has negative charge of the object moving through it. And a planet is directly connected through its poles to the star that is connected to the Birkeland current. And the Z-pinch is creating the plasmoid, or the star, where the planets are rotating around it. But each planet is connected back to the star with Birkeland currents. And it is the auroral belts where the Birkeland currents attach to the planet, which form the aurora. And that's where the energy comes into the planet. It goes right into the core. And at the core, we could see something the same as the sun, but in the core of the earth, a plasmoid in the core of the earth, that the more energy you bring into that plasmoid, the more spontaneous creation of our periodic table occurs in the middle of our planet. So what's happening in the middle of Earth is the same thing that's happening in the solar wind. The solar wind is plasma coming off of the sun at the Z pinch, and it's forming all of the atoms in the periodic table, and it's shooting at us, at our planet and other planets. But when that same energy enters our planet at the aurora belts in the northern and southern poles, that energy goes to the core of Earth and transmutes its own elements there. The more energy, the more transmutation at the core, the more the Earth grows. And that is $1 million answer, John, in just 3 minutes. No one, I think, on Earth could have answered it better, in my opinion. Dances with dingleberries. Could something happen forcing underground oceans up, raising sea levels by hundreds, maybe thousands of feet? No. Dances, calm down. There is no evidence of sea level rising thousands of feet. There is geologic evidence of the sea level coming up and down 400 or 500 feet regularly, every 25,900 years, in fact. It comes up, and then halfway through it goes down. And then it comes up. These are 12,500 year cycles. And then 12,500 years later, it comes down. And then it comes up, and then it comes down. It never comes up thousands of feet. It's the same 400-foot earth breathing every great year. Up for 12,500, down for 12,500, up for 12,500, down for 12,500. So that's what's going on, and no one has an explanation for it to this day. And it's been my life work to study that fluctuation as a stratigrapher and a field geologist that looked at this for the entire rock record for the last 500, 600 million years. This breathing of the earth has occurred every 25,000 years. 12,005 up, 12,005 down. And we do not have an answer. 3 decades ago, my graduate thesis was on the Milankovitch cycles, and that was the mechanism we used. Now, I don't believe that even to be true. I don't believe the precession of the equinoxes is the Earth wobbling. I think the Earth is moving around the Milky Way galaxy and precesses above and below the plane of the ecliptic on the great year. And it takes all of the planets with it, and including our sun. So there's so much science that we need to be moving in the direction of the scientific method that scientists have been stifled for decades because the science is settled, unfortunately. So couple more questions here. We're live now, 19 minutes, 16 seconds, 186 people watching. Thank you all. Please hit the thumbs up. 99 thumbs ups right now. Let's get it to 100. Vari says, will the new equatorial region be safer during the harshest events? Vari, you're obviously not listening to anything I'm saying. The rotational pole will not shift. The equator will always be the equator. So there will be no new equator. Period. So I have no idea what you're... And when you say the harshest events, that's such a vague question. It means nothing. What the fuck are you talking about? Greg Bell says, do we currently have a way to know what other planets are experiencing a pole shift? Greg, I think you don't have any idea what a pole shift is. We're talking about a geomagnetic excursion on Earth. I need to stop calling it a pole shift, and everyone else that is actually a scientist needs to stop calling it a pole shift. It's a geomagnetic excursion. Nothing shifting other than the geomagnetic poles, which are not the rotational poles, and they allow people that have very limited information to think that something radical is happening, other than the fact that the compass is pointing in a different direction. That's all that's happening. In this geomagnetic shift, the geomagnetic pole is moving, so the compass moves. That doesn't do anything to anyone. It's not harmful. It's not dangerous. It's not scary. You don't have to prepare for it. What we do have to prepare for is the fact that the magnetic field, the whole field of Earth, nothing to do with the poles moving. When the field of Earth shrinks, the poles move. So that's two different concepts. The magnetosphere is shrinking, which means more cosmic radiation is going to pummel us. That's what you have to worry about. You stop thinking about the magnetic, where the compass points. That means nothing. Where the compass points has nothing to do with tsunamis washing over you or continents shifting. Other channels have scared the shit out of you about nothing that is about to happen. None of that's going to happen. None of that's happening now. There is no imminent tsunami or crustal slip or rotational pole change. There is no geologic evidence for any of that fairy tale. No matter how many books they sell, no matter how many kids they have or how cute their storytelling hours is, or however many meetups they have, no matter how many idiots buy into their campsite, none of that has any scientific basis other than fringe scientists that are completely bent on scaring the shit out of you. And I'm sorry if I ruined your party for doom and gloom because you think the end of days are coming. That's not how it rolls out. The society you live in is going to collapse way before anything geophysical happens. And if there is a grid down scenario, it's going to be from our sun that shoots out a major flare at us. And we're going to know in advance. And we'll warn you. And it will have nothing to do with crustal slip or fairy tales from other YouTube channels. Trust me. Alan Anderson says, Diamond, thank you for being an inspiration to keep becoming self-sufficient. Of course, that's why we're here. I've had major health problems, and you've been an inspiration to help keep living. Thank you, Alan. Everyone has a purpose. And you just inspired me, so that is your purpose. Richard Robin, Diamond, do you think we will go into an ice age in our lifetime? Richard, we've been in an ice age for 2.5 million years, and nothing has changed. We are just in a time period in the ice age called an interstadial, which lasts between 8 and 15,000 years, and our time is over. So in an ice age, you have periods of maximum glaciation and minimum. And we are at a time of minimum glaciation, which is called the interstadial, which means almost no ice, in between major ice. Everyone has a question. This is the best podcast we ever had for Q&A. I've been doing this for 4 years, and not a single person has a question during these Q&As. It's almost a waste of time. There is nothing but questions during this Q&A, and I applaud you all for finally stepping up to the plate. Frozen says, what effect is the flare having on Earth? Cause there's a lot of earthquakes and volcanoes if the sun isn't the cause, what is? A lot to unpack there. Frozen, first of all, you need to learn grammar and English and sentence structure, because no one in the world would give you anything less than a D or a D minus on you answering anything there or asking a question. I don't even know where to begin with that question because it makes zero sense, period. So please try again. Timothy Wright says, when's small w to begin the sentence and a capital T, capital Y, capital W after the beginning of the sentence? When's the year without a summer supposed to be? Well, if you just put that question into the top bar, it would give you an answer. It would give you 1816. Please learn to be self-sufficient. Thank you. Valerie says, will there be oxygen depletion during a major solar event that kicks our asses? Well, it depends on the scale of the solar event. If there was an X flare approaching 200 to 500, X2 to 500, it may push the magnetosphere so far away from one side of the Earth that there's a portion of the Earth that would actually be exposed to space for a limited time. It would be hours, seconds, minutes, but that area would have no oxygen during that time. There's no evidence that that's ever occurred recently, but based on peer-reviewed papers that we've covered in the last several weeks, just the last few weeks on the channel, about major solar proton events or super flare events that are hundreds, if not 100,000 times bigger than the Carrington event, then this is a complete possibility. So the only reason I shy away from this is there's not any area in recent times in the last several million years where there's a complete kill zone on Earth that we can determine paleontologically. Meaning, if this were to push no oxygen for an area for hours or whatever, everything would be dead. All plants, all animals, everything. And so I think it would be quite evident paleontologically, and we just don't see that type of super kill event except for like 65 million years ago. And even then, there's life right after that major event, which probably burned the whole Earth and rang it like a bell for years. I mean, good question, Vuri. But I don't think that's a major worry. And if an event that severe happens, nothing matters except you finding food and living at that point. Okay, moving through the questions. All right, here we go. Larry Seitz says, show me. If I understand your Younger Dryas previous video, you think a comet or meteorite, not a 12,000 year magnet reversal cycle, caused the Clovis extensions. Well, first of all, learn how to use spell check, Larry. It's easy and it's free, and it makes you look and sound smarter, and it allows other people to understand what the fuck you're saying. But thankfully, I'm smart and I know exactly what you're saying. And I also know that you are without a clue. The Younger Dryas event begins 12,800, 900 years ago with a major event which cools the planet rapidly. And it lasts for about 1,500 years, and we come out of it at 11,500 years ago with two distinct events occurring. One at 12,085 or 12,900, and another one at 11,500 before present. The 12,900 year event is clearly a cometary event with major fragments hitting all over the world. There's the Atacama glass we've covered. There are impactors in the Middle East. There are hundreds of Carolina bays from impactors up in the Great Lakes region. We have impactors all over the world at 12,900 years ago. We have platinum spikes, we have beryllium spikes, all proving cosmogenic catastrophe happening at 12.9, meaning cometary impactors. Charged comets. These don't all reach the surface. There's huge lightning bolts that melt glass, that melt megalithic structures that Robert Schoch thinks is plasma from the sun melting them, which is completely embarrassing because I respect Robert Schoch, but plasma reaching the earth from the sun and melting structures locally is absolutely ridiculous. Robert, can you listen to yourself? What is way more likely is a comet entering the atmosphere, coming by the sun, causing solar outbursts, and then re-entering the earth and causing plasma discharges on the surface. So I don't think many of these people even listen to their own ideas, let alone critique themselves. As we all know about the one person I think is the most insane. Now, Lando T, do sunspots have more energy before and after facing Earth? If so, why? Sunspots have no energy. They're just holes in the plasma of the sun. It's the magnetic fields around the spots that have the energy, Lando. And I implore you to learn more about the sun before you ask more questions. Now, the phenomenon of Earth facing quiet is new, and it began with solar cycle 24. And it is what we believe is indicative of the entire idea that we're in a grand minima. This is the phenomenon of grand minima, that when a sunspot is flaring and then it faces Earth, it shuts down and it doesn't flare until it's not facing Earth anymore. We've been witnessing this now for 15 years. So there is definitely a connection between low sunspots, low solar activity, a waning magnetosphere, and the Earth-facing solar quiet. But there's no definitive answer whatsoever. Lots of great questions. Keep them coming. This is amazing. And I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. This is one of the most intellectual and scientifically appropriate questions and answers I've ever had. This is probably the 50th one I've done, and we're actually getting some answers. Sweet Tooth says, will metal implants be affected by a super flare? No. Would metal implants in cervical column possibly cause electrocution? No. No, these implants are made with non-conductive materials. And in recent times, it's all titanium. So nothing to worry about there. It may help tune you in and like allow the telluric currents to make you rise up and levitate like a god. But one can only hope. Hi, Jerome. Kristen Adams, welcome to the show. Okay, Frozen, 9:14. So we're like 20 minutes out on questions. That's how many questions we have here. What is causing so much disturbance in the earth, like earthquakes and volcanoes, if it's not the sun? Frozen, newsflash, there is no uptick in earthquakes or volcanoes on the earth. Zero. We are at a deficit for major earthquakes on Earth and have been for years. We're now cataloging a deficit of magnitude 7 and 8 earthquakes for 3 years. Volcanoes are at an all-time low. The only unique eruption is Hunga Tonga in the last decade. So we are at a deficit for volcanic eruptions and a deficit for major earthquakes on Earth. So I have no idea. You're not speaking facts. Let's talk about John Levi. John Levi is just a guy looking for clicks. He doesn't answer emails. He doesn't do interviews. He is a storyteller, similar to Dutch Synths. Not worthy of your time because there's very little scientific rigor or endeavor on anything he says. He tries to confuse you, showing you a lot of fantastic pictures like mud flood, but none of it has any backing scientifically. As you will see below any of his videos, there aren't links to shit. He doesn't have any scientific peer-reviewed anything about any of his ideas because he's making them up. Please think critically. He's like, there, look at this. This is the World's Fair. These cities were built millions of years before that. Be like, John, the fake World's Fair cities are made of plaster and cardboard, you idiot. Please do some research. Arnold Schmidt says, up in my neck of the woods, we had snow in December, and it was cold for 3 weeks and 1 week in January. Great. Thank you, Arnold. Okay. McKinty Jones says, has the mass of the Earth changed over the millennia? Well, yes. In fact, we gain tons of cosmic dust every year. It's raining down on us, passing right through your brain and accumulating all over the Earth. So we gain thousands of pounds of cosmic dust annually. And during times of low magnetosphere, that dust increases 1,000-fold. I wish I had some numbers up here. The amount of cosmic dust that will rain down upon us at the magnetic field low is exponential. And it's radioactive, and it causes evolution and mass extinction. Kristen Adams says, Magnetic Reversal News, did you see the Project Veritas video showing James O'Keefe dressed as Santa? I feel like people really need to see that. Well, my best friend is Santa in Pagosa Springs, so I would agree. Doob Cruz says, Christmas trees for all. And I'm sure he means the kind that come in these little containers. All right, we're catching up. No, man, we're pretty far out here. Michael White, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. We love you. And this is definitely a boom to knowledge. Probably the best Q&A we've had. All right, Colin Delightful says, is it true that the sun's poles last flipped in 2012, producing a large CME that missed Earth by 9 days? If so, and the poles flip every 11 years, could Earth in 2023 be at risk for another large CME? It's not 2023. It's looking at like solar polar. Or we can bring up the solar polar fields from solin.info pretty rapidly. So I will bring that up real quick for you guys, the solar polar fields, and we'll share that. So what he's talking about is back here, the solar polar fields crossed. That's the flip right there. And it is 2013, 11/3/2013. The date I'm getting. Well, it could be argued that it was also 11/8/2012. So all those vertical lines, the green, the purple, the red, and the maroon, are arguable solar polar field flips. But what we do know that happens on these events is the largest earthquakes on Earth occur at the solar polar flips. And I believe Ben Davidson has a peer-reviewed paper on the topic of the last one. So we know that these solar polar reversals occur every 11 years, and the next one isn't happening next year. It will probably, based on this graph, happen in 2024, end of 2024. So we're looking for the next solar polar reversal for about 2 years from now. So there's your answer, Colton. And will there be a large CME? Well, if you haven't looked at all of our work in recent weeks, we've determined through peer-reviewed literature and all the major solar flares and super flares that have occurred in the Holocene that the super flares occur on the cusp of the minimum. So they either occur a year before the minimum or a year after or thereabouts. And the next solar minimum will be about 2030. So that's when we should see a major earthquake, in my opinion. And the CME super flare would be around that cusp. No, not an earthquake, a major CME. I'm sorry. The earthquake happens at the solar polar reversal, which is at solar max, which is next year or the year after. So end of 23, end of 24, major earthquake on that solar polar reversal. 4 years from then, we will see a major solar outburst. Whew, it's so confusing. Thank you, Holly. Just give me a second. Sometimes you got to do a dab. All right, 45 minutes in. It's a sin. All right, let's see if we got a couple more questions I can do. I'll do 15 more minutes, see how many we can get to. This is amazing how many questions we have. If I don't get to your questions, remember, we'll do this again in a week, maybe just a few days, because there are so many good questions. Maybe we'll do it this weekend. I know it's the holidays. A lot of you are going to be around, and these are some good questions coming in. Spay and neuter your God. Due to the gravimetric proportions of the geological geothermal magnetic reversal of the atmosphere and solar system, which would be number 5? There's no such thing as a geothermal magnetic reversal of the atmosphere. Moreover, there is no such thing as a geological geothermal magnetic reversal. You just added up a bunch of words to sound smart, and it comes off really dumb to a smart person. So spay and neuter your God. Please try again. Coke Machine says baseball. Yes. I love it when they sew the animal skin around the straw. It's amazing. AAA Beverage says Aurora. Diamond says Borealis. All right. Spay and neuter your God has another one. Is gravity an anomaly of electromagnetic proportions of gravimetric extortions? Well, it could be the capitulation of the vagination of your situation. And if you watch enough of the fascinations of the retardations, then you're going to obviously have imagination. Spay and neuter. Frozen says, you is messing with me. It keeps sending me back to the start of show. Marie says, it's a magnetic reversal, not a polar flip. Just saying. I see lots here about polar shift. And that's because a lot of people are confusing people. It is a magnetic polar shift, but not the poles aren't shift. The polar areas aren't shifting. And so if you don't understand the complex science of the geopoles, the rotational pole, the geomagnetic pole, then this is going to be completely confusing for the masses, which is on purpose, by the way. They don't want you to know what's going on. Yes, McKinty John. Energy equals mass. E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which is completely untrue, but explains in general terms what's actually happening. Yes, spontaneous transmutation of elements using energy. Not really hard to understand. Richard Wagner, do you have a question? Holy crap. Morning, Diamond. Say hello to our friend Al and tell him to get back in his hole. Shut up, Al! He says we're going too late here on the Q&A. I can't even believe it. He had bundt cake tonight. It is the holidays. All right, one more from Spay and Neuter. Due to the expanding Earth theory, does the gravimetric proportions of the electromagnetic extortion hypothesized in literature? What do you think? I already told you, stringing a bunch of words together that mean nothing makes you look like an idiot. Holy shit. Yeah, I think so. I think it's some type of a heartbeat, Coke machine, coming from the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way. It is the heartbeat of the Milky Way, in fact. Okay, AAA beverage, Diamond, Ogala Aquifer going down by this motion you described. Well, that's not a complete sentence, so I have no idea what you mean. So if you could add a little context there, by the motion I described, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So do I believe in equinoxes? It's not a belief. Equinoxes are a scientific description of a position of planets. It's not a belief. Equinoxes are a fact. So a lot of people are really confused about what is science fiction and what is science fact. Equinoxes are not an idea or a theory. It's something that actually occurs that you can measure. Just like saying, if I walk towards you and away from you every 365 days, I'll be close to you and away from you. It's not a theory, it's a fact. And so, of course, I believe in equinoxes. Because it's not a belief. Okay. We are now 48 minutes, 34 seconds, 267 watching. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you. It's been a great Q&A. First Q&A that actually has questions. Pull my finger says, I keep hearing current sheet. No, you only hear that on one channel. What other kind of word for electromagnetic could we use to describe this process? Brendan, what process are you talking about? So in your next question, for a full sentence, you need to have the noun in there, which is the process. What other kind of word for electromagnetic could we use to describe global warming? Mountain building. You get the picture? Frozen says, will we see signs in migration and jet streams before the change comes? We're already seeing signs in migratory animals beaching themselves, and the jet streams have already shifted to meridional a decade ago. So apparently you missed the memo, Frozen. Jerome, if you read any single one of the papers, this is the same shit that happened any day. It means zero. They were able to create fission for a microsecond for $1 billion in an apparatus. It's garbage. It's fucking nothing. I'm sick of this is the same story for 30 fucking years. They've created nothing. There is no breakthrough. Spay and neutered your God, who's apparently not the smartest person on earth, says, does Al Roker feel pains? Does Al Roker, period, sentence, feel pains, period, due to the ASS toroids in his expanding geomagnetic? All right. This guy's all right. Watch what we can do here. All right. Decky 69 with the fucking boom. Decky, I'll get to you in a minute. We're like hours away from your super chat. But can someone just get rid of this guy? Anyone can just put spay and neutered in a timeout. Arnold says, Diamond, last October 2021, it was cold and snowing by December 2nd, minus 25 C for 5 weeks. This November 1st was first snow and mild temps until this coming week, completely opposite to the Ukraine. None of that makes sense. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about, Arnold. Because you're talking about weather. You're like, why is the weather different this week than last week? Why is it different? Well, it's weather. Okay. All right. Where are we? Where is that super chat? All right, let's get to you, Decky. I can see your super chat over here, so I'm just going to answer your question. Decky says, and I just lost it, of course. All right. Could Saginaw Bay be the impact crater that caused the Carolina Bays and the rainwater basins? I was there with USGS, and it was shallow compared to Lake Huron. No, well, Decky, it's all of those lakes are probably impactors from the same event. Huron, there's two main, Saginaw Bay and an area, I think, east of there. There's two main area impactors where all of the bays line up. But then again, they don't all have to line up. I mean, for them all having to exactly line up. What if there's 18 impactors overlaying each other? Because what the bays show is that everything's overlaying each other. So what if it's like boom, 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 boom? But there's main impact sites and there's multiple trajectories. So you're going to have objects coming out in similar arrays. So if it's two big objects with 10 other objects, it's going to be boom, and it's going to shift the objects. So most of them are going to come out in the same trajectory, but they're all going to be slightly different. See how that works? Boom. So yes, I think everything that you said is possible and probable. Matt says, your thoughts on movies being shown to us as projection as what is to come. Off topic, but maybe give you a break from repeating yourself. No, Matt, we've seen this time immemorial. The tell lie vision is programming you for what they know. The powers that be use the tell lie vision to program you about what's happening. This has been going on for 70 years. I don't think I need to repeat that. Throw your television out the window because you are being programmed by the television, tell lie vision. Timothy Wright says, what do you have to belittle everybody? We're not all educated. Well, belittle is one word. And claiming you're an idiot as a defense is pathetic. We live in an information age where any human in a period of just 7 weeks can get a GED for free online. Yeah, you can learn stuff. You don't have to watch Jerry Springer and stare into your square and watch TikToks all day. Could you imagine if for 8 hours a day, all the dumb people were getting their GED and learning math and science? What a wonderful world we would live in. But we have fat, lazy, diabetic, sick fucktards. The majority of the population is ill, on pharmaceuticals, doesn't know how to grow food, in a grid down scenario will die and will beg for our help because they can't get their medication or their equipment is failing. It's not my fault. I don't have any oxygen. I don't go to the doctor. I'm sure if I started going to the doctor in my 30s, that I'd be sick now. And I did do that in my 20s. And they gave me all this medication that made me sicker. But I got wiser. And I learned that the food I eat is my medication. So, and if you haven't heard of any of this from me, then you haven't been watching my channel. And there have been over 7,000 videos I've made in the last 7 years, 3,000 of which I had to burn because the powers that be don't want you to know what I've told you. Learn to be self-sufficient. Grow your own food. The food you eat in the supermarket is not food, even if it looks like food. If it looks like a tomato or a pepper, it doesn't have the nutrients that tomato or a pepper you grow organically will have. It's in fact nutrient deficient, meaning you'll think you're eating healthy food, but you're not healthy in any manner because the amount of pesticide on that fruit or vegetable supersedes the tiny little bit of nutrition that's within it. And if it has glyphosate on it, which is a chelator, it will actually prevent your gut biome and your intestines from taking up the nutrition because that's what the definition of a chelator is. So the more glyphosate we eat, which is now on everything in the supermarket, the sicker we will get, no matter how much money we spend on organic or whatever we think we're spending on. So this is an end game. There is no safe way to buy yourself a healthy diet. The only way to do it is to get it from a permaculturalist, a no-spray farmer, and to know where your food's coming from. And almost none of you have listened to this warning, which we've given you for 7 years. And I'm sure all of you know family members dying of cancer and this, that, and the other, and they took the jab. I can't help you. You are so lost. Richard Wagner says, have you heard about the Line City project in Saudi Arabia? Yeah. This is such an insane concept. It doesn't allow biodiversity on the planet to move through it, but it contains you within a single strip, which is a prison that you will not be allowed to leave. But everything will be with just in 15 minutes walking. This is the prison planet they are creating, Richard. And this is what we've been warning about for 7 years. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. You need to learn how to grow your own food, be self-sufficient, and use technology to your advantage. All the people in the chat that don't know how to write a sentence, learn how to spell check. There are so many apps that will allow you to fix your sentences. Stop being a victim. Become an asset to yourself and the people around you. If there's a grid down scenario, the last thing humanity needs is a liability. It's hard to believe that anyone would want to be a liability in the future that's coming, where they're about to microchip your brain. And maybe in a near future, that will be mandated. Please, we implore you all, take hold of your future. Learn how to be self-sufficient. And if you're in a major city and you think you can't learn that, you're lying to yourself. If you learn how to be self-sufficient in a major city, the moment an event occurs and you're educated, you can get out. And if you know a place to go, you'll be welcome with open arms because you will be an asset instead of a liability. Stop being a liability. We love you. Be safe.